Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I'm going to do something with these Renantheras or I'm going to lose them. And while they're in their pots at the moment, if you take a look at that one, it's dirty. The leaves are dirty. Now I know what this is this lava rock is giving off dirt. It's not that clean as a product. And that gets in my bucket, and of course these, when they go into soak, they often go quite deep, you know, when the water's fresh and it's quite full in there, and all this dirt's getting on the leaves. Now that's going to stop them photosynthesizing for a start, which these need. These are highlight orchids, so any restriction on the activities of that light is not going to do them any good, is it? So first thing I'm going to do with this one is give it a clean. This is just RO water and a cotton wool pad. It's nothing fancy, and it's just to get this surface dirt off for a start, and this is a lot easier to do while it's in its pot. So now, before it comes out. So that's the first job, just get it sort of cleaned up a bit. And obviously if the lava rock's gone, then from now on my Vander bucket won't get dirty, will it? Because that's also getting on my Vander roots, obviously. The dirty water is getting on them and stopping them probably functioning properly. Anyway, I'm sure this will be a much better plant. Cleaned up. Now it's growing, this one. It's not good, but it's growing. Now I'm just going to go underneath these leaves as well, because if they're dirty on top, they're dirty underneath as well. Even though I may not be able to see it. And then when I get it out of the pot, I should probably do the stem and get all this dirt off once and for all. And hopefully. And tomorrow I've got to do the RO water anyway, I'm getting low. Right, so a bit at a time. Let's do a bit at a time rather than try and do everything all at once. So the next thing I want to do is take one of the wire strands off. So that will be the easiest one, because it's only got one twist around it. I might actually have to go and get my pliers. If I can unhook one like that, then the other two will bend out of the way, like that. Now I'm going to take these large pieces of lava rock out carefully, one at a time. If I try and tip anything now, then I'm going to damage some roots. Now, these roots are not good. They're not good, and they haven't developed. That's the problem. They've effectively stopped growing. There's a little tiny new tip on there. Now that's it. That's all that's left of a root system on here. And the trouble is with this lava rock, every time you pick the pot up or dunk it in the bucket, it moves. And it's harsh. Very harsh stuff. And it's almost impossible to jam in so that it doesn't move without crushing roots. Right, so we've got one root that I managed to thread through, which I've now got to unthread through. I'm hoping that should just pull through gently. Well, that one's not going to, I don't think. It's the only bit that's grown. And it's grown through the tiniest of holes. Oh well, it'll either thread out or it won't. There we go. Right, so then this growing tip here would be useful to keep. Useful enough that I'm prepared to sacrifice a little bit of the basket to make sure I keep that growing tip. So we'll cut there, cut above it, and remove that one so that there's room for that to go through. Right, so unthreading this one, and then that's this one out. The second easiest, I'd call that. Second easiest. Get the rest of the lava rock out. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I can't see me ever using it. And I just don't. Yeah, the inside of the pot's filthy. Everything's just filthy. Right, so we'll We'll give the rest of the plant a bit of a clean up too. As I said, while we've got it out, it's going to be a lot easier to get at. So we'll give the roots a wipe, surface dirt off, save watering them today. And what I'll be looking for is these roots sprouting out. That's what I want them to do and get some growth. So not growing at the moment. And then we'll do the stem as well. Right, so that'll do. And then what I'm going to do, if it'll come off, is get rid of the hard sheath that surrounds the stem, because that could be inhibiting little roots coming out. Might not be, but it might be. So if I can just get that to loosen off with my nail, it's very well entrenched. I think I'm going to do more damage than good. We'll just leave it. Right, so that's one done. Now I would like to just throw it in the Vander bucket now and hydrate the whole plant. It's dirty water, isn't it? It's the whole point. Right, so that's one. Now my idea is that it is going to go back in that basket, but it's not going back in the lava rock. And whatever I decide to do, I want to do to all three. Now I've actually got some water in my watering bowl here, so I'm just going to stand that in there. It's relatively clean water, so that will just at least hydrate this plant for now. So that's one. These can just get thrown on the floor at the moment. Now, this will be the next easiest one to do. I'm going to have to get somewhere else to put this lava rock to, because there'll be too much to just use a little dish here, and I can pile it up for a while. Again, I've got some roots right down in the pot. Look at the size of some of these pieces. But the roots haven't attached to anything. Now that was one of my worries, was that if they attach to the lava rock, I'm stuck with it forever. But they didn't. And I think a lot of that is because they're not growing. They obviously just don't like this media. Some of it could be that the roots, that these are not getting dunked often enough, and so everything's drying out, if you see what I mean. So that's why they don't like it. It's nothing to do with the media, it's to do with the fact that they're not getting hydrated properly, because these roots are quite badly dehydrated. But I'm hoping to fix that. Right, I don't see anything right. We've got that tiny little dead bit there. We'll get rid of that. That will stop it getting hooked up. Little dead bit poking out there. What else have we got? We've got a few. We've got one that comes out and goes back in again and then comes out through the bottom. I doubt if I'm going to be able to thread that back through. It's got to be worth a go, isn't it? Oh, it's dead. The bit that's hanging out the bottom is dead anyway, so I can cut that. That bit's just dead. So now it should pull back out of there, and then all I've got to do is lift this gently out of here. What about you? Are you going to unthread? It's a very stiff root. They all are. Gotcha. Right. You know, this one's got a root nubbin. This is about to grow a new root. But look at the state of the plant. It's losing its bottom two leaves. That only leaves it three. But these leaves have yellowed enough that there's no point in them staying on there now. And I'm hoping that by removing them, we release some more root nubbing nubbin areas, because that's where they come from, that's where the roots come from. And behind, yeah, see there's another nice one there. Could even be a flower spike. Yeah, so I'm hoping that's a root nubbin, because this plant can't support a flower spike. And again there, and again there. But this area needs to get hydration. It's no good having root nubbins if they're in the air dry. And don't forget, my humidity is not as high here as it was in the other place. Whoops. Yeah, this root is dead. This root, that big root is dead right back up to the plant. Oh, it's tough as well. There we go. Mind you, these are my not so sharp scissors because I still haven't found the others. Well, that's a poor root system. And we'll do the same as we did before. We'll give it a quick clean, although this one doesn't seem as dirty for some reason. But nonetheless, we'll clean the leaves off. And the underside. And the stem. Is it worth trying to get this sheath off? I'm going to get a root farther down. Possible, I suppose. I mean, you know, in the natural environment, the plant, these sheaths don't often get as woody as they do in our home environments because they're getting that rained on. So they're not dry, and they've also got the humidity to go with it. So they don't dry as much as they do when we've got hold of them. See if I can make room for that in there. Some water on that one too, while it's waiting. Right, that's that one. Now, this is going to be the awkward one, because although this looks like it's got a good root system, it hasn't, because they're nearly all dead. And the first thing I'm going to do is decide what's dead and cut it off, because it's going to make getting it out of the pot a lot easier. So that's dead right back to the plant. Dead at least back to there. That root's got one piece of it that might actually be able to sprout out. Just that piece there that's left now. That's not too bad. This one's capable of sprouting out. This one is, but not that end. Is that green inside? Doesn't look very green to me. Let's go back a bit more. Oh yeah, it is green. Good. There's life there. And then this has got a growing tip. And a second growing tip. So this one, need to be a bit more careful with. Remember to take the thing off this time. I've forgotten the last one. This one can come right off because these are just plastic clips, so I'm going to unwire it or do anything dramatic. Just lift off. Right, so before we get it out of the pot this time, we'll clean it because again it's dirty. So we'll give it a go. As much of this dirt off as possible. This one's got a lot of leaves. They vary in size, which shows non-consistent growing, or inconsistent growing, I think the proper word. You know, when a new leaf doesn't come out the right size, there's something not right. And then when the next leaf does come out the right size, something's okay again, that wasn't right before. You see what I mean? So it's inconsistent. You see these when they're well grown and the leaves are all almost exactly the same size. Often slightly bigger as you get towards the top of the plant, except the very top two that are brand new. And again on these lower leaves we'll have a go at the underside. So this plant shouldn't be that dirty because this one very rarely it gets submerged because it's got a reasonable sized pot and the plant sticks out of that pot quite a long way, so this one doesn't sit in the water like the others do. Right, let's start getting this stuff out again. I'll just find a bag to put this in and put it down in the shed. It may well stay there forever. Are there any roots down in here? Yeah, there is. As I say, am I getting this out and wasting my time here? So if there's no roots down in the pot, there's no point, is there? But there is. There are roots down in here. So this has got by far the best root system, but it's not good. It's just better than the others. Right, well that takes me down. There is a root right in the very bottom of the pot. So let's try tipping it out. That's better, there's just one big bit wedged in there. Yeah, it's actually got a root attached. So one root did actually attach to one piece. And unfortunately that did have a growing tip on it, which is now broken. Never mind, let's hope we can grow some more. Now this root may or may not unthread. And the others did, didn't they? I mean, these seem quite brittle, but they seem just about bendy enough to come back through. So what's holding it in there now then? That one and, well, let go, that one. Right, there we go. Right, I'm just going to, oh no, I'm going to pop that up. I shall have to clear up. That's a shame about that. That was a nice growing tip there, broken off. Never mind, let's just hope we can grow some more. Right, any more dead roots? Yes, there. Completely dead. And these are all capable of shooting out now, so they're going to have to stay. So somehow or other they're all going to have to get in a pot. But as I said, they seem brittle, but they will bend without snapping. And quite flexible really. So there we go, those are they. Those are the three plants. Now I am going to have a clear up. I don't know, should we, is it worth trying to get these sheaths off down here? Because these are where old leaves have been. And these are coming off quite easily. Obviously that, you know, makes way, hopefully, for where some new roots might come. I do say might. I'll leave it at that. I'm not taking any leaves off to encourage roots. What leaves I've got on this are staying. Because this is not a bad plant. This isn't a bad plant. This is capable of blooming, possibly. Right, so those are our three plants. I'll have a clear up now. And while I'm clearing up, I'll have a think about what's going to happen to these. They are going to go back in these baskets, and I suspect they're just going to get bark or bark and moss, but I'll be thinking while I'm clearing up. I'll be back. Okay, it's going to be bark and moss, and I'm hoping that the plants will get right down in the media part way up the stalk, and if necessary I'm going to take the odd root or two off to achieve that, because if I don't get these existing roots down in something, I've just as well have left them where they were, quite honestly. So this is my new bark, and there is a downside to this new bark. It's not clean. I've only just started using it, and the last time I used it, first time I watered something, there's an awful lot of dirt came out. Well, dust, whatever. So it's just as easy at the moment. The water in the Vander bucket is waste. I will take some of it out because it is actually RO water. It's just had these plants dunked in it a few times, so they've been flushed the last couple of dunks. But it's enough water to be able to water some things over the next day or two in case it rains or something and I don't want to do the RO unit out in the bad weather. Although today's bad weather is a flipping cold wind and no sunshine. So I'm not going to pick and poke around with this. Whatever is in there is what I'm going to use. And I'm going to put in this moss. Now this moss is coarse moss. So I'm not actually going to cut it up this time. I'm going to leave it as coarse moss. The idea being that it'll be threaded all through this bark into as many places. I'm breaking some of it up because it's very large. It's a very coarse moss, this Welsh moss. Still reminds me of the guy, this was Marius, the guy who had the Dendrobium collection. When he was doing his presentation, his talk, the guy who was taking the notes, which is not an easy job, taking notes at a presentation, it really isn't. And the trouble is you're concentrating on your notes really, and you're not thinking straight because it's such a concentration. So things that are being said you're trying to record rather than taking them in context. So when Marius showed some of his orchids planted in this, and he said, I'm currently using this Welsh moss. The guy taking the notes looked up and said, where does that come from? Then Marius just sort of looked at him and went, Wales? Because it does. I'm sure it's a nickname, Welsh moss. It has got a proper scientific name, obviously. But Welsh moss is good enough. And it does come from a private estate in Wales. So this is not something I can collect. I've never seen any. Well, there is a miniature version of this that I can collect locally and have done. So, right. Quite heavy on the moss. There is a purpose. So I need something that's in there like a liner. And then we'll start with the biggest one. So we'll start with the awkward one. These roots have got to go in this pot. So somehow or other they've got to be bent round and the plant has got to go in as well. Now if some of these roots snap in this process, so be it, I'm afraid. Because if I don't get this plant to hydrate properly, it's not going to grow. And then I just as well not bother. You see what I mean? I'd like these to push on and eventually flower. Well, they're not going to do it if they're not happy. Now I've got one silly little root at the top here that, yeah, can I bend that? Yes. That's now got it quite deep in the pot. It's not central, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. All of these roots are now in the pot. Now I can carefully fill in the holes. And I'm not just going to chuck this in, I'm going to push this into the places where there are gaps so that I can guarantee there's some media in the gaps. And then the first time I water it, it'll all fall out the holes. I'm going to see if I can get something behind it, just move it away from the edge of the pot slightly. But the fact that this is quite chunky bark, there's a lot of air around these roots despite them being far more hydrated than they've ever been. So it's a combination now. They haven't lost their air, but they've gained moisture. I don't think they've gained enough moisture to rot, because that's the problem with plants that tend to have most of their roots in the air, that rely on very high humidity. They do rot quite easily if you enclose the roots and stop the air getting to those roots. That will happen. So, and of course, if the plant's not upright, it'll get an S shape, because now it's in here, it'll start growing upright. More upright than it is now, anyway. So, right. all the roots have a covering, and we've come up the stem a reasonable amount. If this doesn't do it, I don't know what will. So I just need a little bit more because I've got one root sticking out the top, which I'd like to cover. Because you know what's going to happen, if I try and dunk this now, all the bark will float off. So this is now a pot that will have to be watered in the traditional manner by pouring water through it. This is not going to go in the Vanda bucket. I do have to consider the Vanda bucket. I now have 2 Vandas, the only 2 plants that need the Vanda bucket. And I'm keeping it for those. I have to ask every now and again, is it worth it? Well, one of them was a present from Hannah, so it's worth it for that alone, I suppose, because you know, I can't get rid of that plant, despite it not being in a very good state. Right. How can I get that more upright? Eventually it will sort itself out, but I haven't got... Oh, it's just going to have to grow however it wants. Perhaps if I get a few more of these leaves through there. Oh, that'll have to do. Right, so that'll now have to have a really good soak. Lots of dirty water will come out the bottom. The other thing I've got to do with these is I've got to get them up. These have got to go up somewhere, because at the moment they're hanging off the bottom of my mobile racks. Well, that's probably the darkest place in the grow room, and these need to be in the lightest place. And I'm thinking of these little wire S-shaped hooks that you can't see that I actually hung that rack up are strong. Now I've got some of those in the kitchen. I'm seriously thinking of putting one each side and putting a tight wire across, and then these can hang from the roof. Now I will bang my head on them, but that's no different to where they were any other place where I used to bang my head on them frequently. I've got a set of words that I can use when that happens, so you know, I haven't got to think some new ones up. I've got plenty. I've got a stockpile. Right, so at the moment I'm quite liking this as an idea. Now this is the basket that had butchery done to it because it was too dense, so I actually cut sections out so that there was more room for the roots at the time, whereas now I don't want room for the roots, I want the media to stay in there. Right. Now this moss that I'm using here, I'm taking the green stuff off the top, and underneath is brown stuff. Now because I haven't done this, I haven't used this amount of this moss before, I'm wondering whether the brown stuff underneath will go green. Now it's got the light, does the green bits on the top have come off? You never know, might do. Who knows? As I say, it's all, when something's new, I mean I've had the moss a while, but I haven't used it much because I haven't had much repotting or new mounting to actually do. So, right, so we'll chuck some of that in the bottom. Flop. I forget which one was in there, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Neither of them have got. This is the one with the worst roots, and unfortunately the root nubbins, where's my camera, are quite high up the stem. Now though this needs to be in the media up to there, and I don't quite know how I'm going to do that. That's the complete depth of the pot. So I'm going to take some media out. I need this plant right in, and that will probably mean the roots will have to bend. That's not bad. That's not bad. And then if we get a load of that down that side to hold the plant in place. Sort of like that. So what I'm trying to do is hold it away from the side. Just chuck some bark in. Right, more bark. Funny, when I bought this I thought that's much too big a bag, I'm never going to use all that. I will, I'm sure I will. Mind you, I've only got one big show left this year, which is Melbourne, which is in June, middle of June, which is the international show. And I've got my visit to the Mathers Foundation, the mini bus trip, but we can't buy anything there. But we are also going to McBean's, so we're doing half the day at one and half the day at the other. And at McBean's you can buy things, so I may come home with a plant. The only problem with McBean's is the prices, because they are ridiculous. They are way over and above what the actual plants are worth. Their belief of what the plants are worth outweighs what they're, what they really are worth, quite honestly. I know some of them are their own crosses, they're unique, you can't find them anywhere else, but it doesn't make them worth the sort of money they're often asking for. Not really. I mean, when I went there, which was quite a long time ago, they had one of their own odontoglossum crosses, nice specimen plant, fair enough. But £500, that's a lot of money for a plant that could die. That's the problem when you spend. That's the problem with the bonsai hobby as well. If you've got the money, well then if you've got the money it probably doesn't matter so much. But if you've got the money to go somewhere like Peter Chan's and buy some specimen-sized bonsai, well you can wave bye-bye to £4,000 or £5,000 for each one. That's an awful lot of money for a tree that could actually die. It is a live product after all. You must never forget that. It's a living thing, so it might not make it. Right, so I've got that moss as high up the stem as I can, and hopefully if any of these new roots do come out a little bit higher than the plant, they will head downwards, attracted by the moisture. So that's that one done. Now these will be allowed to dry. I'm not being totally silly here. I'm not going to keep them soaking wet. They will still have a wet-dry cycle. It's just that the wet part of that wet-dry cycle will last an awful lot longer than about an hour. Because that, yeah, happier with that. Much happier with that. Right, and the last one. Just get this plastic clip out of the way. Right. And how's this one going to go in? This was the one with the very long roots. But that root will twist round, so I want the plant in the middle if possible, and it looks like it will, so I think we'll be okay. Right, so more moss, there's half a tray of moss gone here. But that's what I got it for, and it's repeatable. It's not like I can't get any more. I can always get some more. The only problem with buying it is the volume. It's a sheer amount. It doesn't sell small amounts. It comes in big bags. Well, if you think I've got 4 trays out of it. Lynn had a bag full. It's a lot of it. So, but then it doesn't cost a fortune. That huge bag costs less than a much smaller amount of the zombie moss. So volume, size for size wise, it's good value for money. Are you going to go in there? No, you can poke out through the hole when I've got you right in the pot, but not yet. Right, now you can poke out the hole if you want. I think I'm going to bring this up one. So this root is determined to stick out through a hole, and I think it might be too deep otherwise. Right, let's go. I'm watching what I'm doing all the time to make sure I don't leave any large air pockets. As I said, it would defeat the object. And the usage of this large Welsh moss, when I look at how it works on mounts, it has an awful lot of air in and around it, and it does dry quite quickly because of that. So although this seems a lot of moss to go around something that would normally grow with mainly aerial roots, with this amount of holes in this pot and my airflow, my fan that's not running at the moment because it would take my wig off, there's plenty of airflow, plenty of escape for the moisture, so that will happen. And these will still dry quite quickly, but they will stay wet longer than they were before. They're not weighing a ton, and they're not going to get my Vander bucket dirty anymore because I'll water them normally. I'm now going to start watering these as though they were mounts, so that's how they'll get watered now. Right, dirty mitts. So we'll have one on there, one on there, and one on there. Now to me they already look a lot better. They're clean for a start. Right, so now all I've got to do is get a wire or something fixed up so that I can get them up in the roof. And then hopefully we can start growing these properly. Because it would be sad not to. If I remember when I bought them, which is a while ago, and they've done so little since then, it was quite a long time ago, they actually cost a fair amount of money. They were not cheap orchids. They were my let's try a new genus orchid at the time, and that was quite a long time ago. And I haven't decided to try a new genus since, and at the moment I have no intentions of starting a new genus. And one of the main reasons is I'm very, very limited to where I can buy plants. I've probably got 2 or 3 places in the UK that will do mail order, and I wouldn't ever buy anything mail order from Burnham's. I'd rather go there and choose the plant myself. Lawrence Hobbs comes round our local shows. He mainly sells stuff that he's bought in, and then you've got Spice Exotic Plants that I'm happy with their mail order stuff. And that's it. All the European sellers that I had, options to buy from, the big nurseries like a Kearns, and they're no good now. I can't get plants from those because of Brexit, so I'm very limited. So I have no plans on starting a new genus. So Catasetums, Paphiopedilums and Phragmipediums are not going to happen, so don't ask. Right, that's it. That's like tray time without the tray. And thanks for dropping by, thanks for watching and all that stuff. And don't forget, those of you who haven't done it yet, the link to the new bonsai channel is in the description of all my orchid videos. It's only a few minutes of your time to just skip across using that link and subscribe to that new channel and help it grow. I must admit, it's hit the ground running. It's not doing bad. I'm getting little badges popping up from YouTube saying, oh, you've achieved this already. Oh, I've got a little cup for getting 300 subscribers in a short amount of time. So it's coming along, but obviously it's got a long way to go. And I made a mistake, thanks for pointing it out, whoever it was. I said that I need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 views to monetize. It's not 4,000 views, it's an awful lot harder than that. It's 4,000 viewing hours. So I've got to get 4,000 hours clocked against that channel before I can monetize. I got a little badge for saying I've got 50. That's a long way to go. But as far as the subscribers are concerned, I'm heading up towards the 400 mark. It's going to go a lot slower now. Obviously there'll be a lot less people joining in. Yeah, if you think, that's over a third of the number of subscribers I need to monetize, but I'm nowhere near the watch hours. That's going to take a long time. So we could be a year or more away, or even 2. Who knows? But at least it's up and running. I'm dead pleased with that. So thanks all of those that have gone across, had a look round, or at least just subscribed, if nothing else. And thank you for those in advance that are going to do it in a minute. Aren't you? I'm watching. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.